from self-inflicted gunshot wounds. Authorities right now are investigating the shooting as a hate crime. And tonight, police departments across several major cities in the United States are actually increasing their presence at mosques and other places of worship out of an abundance of caution. Tonight, my source is CNN's senior investigative correspondent Kyung Law, who's on the ground for us in San Diego. And Kyung, obviously, we've been getting updates from officials there at the scene. What have you been hearing from them?
Well, what police are trying to share is exactly how all of this unfolded. They're saying that it started with an early tip-off from a mother who called police because she said that her son was missing, that he was with a companion dressed in camo, and that she was concerned about her son and what he might do. Take a listen.
We received a call of a runaway juvenile. After speaking with the mom began to piece together bits and pieces of information over an extended period of time. The information that she was gathering and conveying to us began to elevate the threat level that we were perceiving with this information. She believed her son was suicidal. And she began to share information that several of her weapons were missing. Her vehicle was missing, in addition to her son.
And there wasn't a specific threat to a place like the mosque or to a school, Caitlin, but they were getting that early tip-off, so it did get them to engage with this mother very early. Caitlin.
And I heard them talk about investigating as a hate crime, talking about a note that was left, but not saying, what was written on it. Any indications about the motive?
That's what they're really looking for. What specifically is the motive that would get two young people, one of them in high school, to take this sort of an action? And at this point, they're just settling on this is a hate crime. The reason why they're coming to that is because the mother produced a suicide note that was left by the son. It had some type of racial pride writings, although the police chief didn't get very specific. And they also talked about some sort of hate speech on one of the weapons. So that together, they are saying that it does appear to be a hate crime. But a specific motive and why this mosque, those are still questions that are outstanding.
What do we know, Kyung, about the victims? What we do know, Caitlin, is that these are three men. They are associated with the mosque. From what we have heard, we haven't been able to confirm their identities with families. So I hope you'll forgive a little bit of my vagueness here. But one of the people who multiple people have told us was beloved by this community as a security guard. And having covered a lot of these sort of incidents as of late in the United States, these religious institutions, whether we're talking about a Jewish school or a mosque, or any sort of religious institution, they've had to engage security guards. And so this was the security guard who the kids looked up to, a big, lovable man. And I want you to listen to the father whose young son goes to the school and what he had to say about him.
I truly know in my heart from knowing that man that he was sacrificing his life and took that bullet knowing that I'd rather take it than the kids. And that is what makes me emotional.
And what he says is he doesn't know, Caitlin, what would have happened if that guard had not been there. Caitlin.
Yeah, it's just devastating to think about. And of course, our thoughts go out to the families, especially the security guard as well.
With the deadly shooting at a mosque, and officials are giving an update right now. It's just started. Let's listen in.
Because of the horrific actions of today. This is a city's and a community's absolute worst nightmare as a free society. And I appreciate all of your patience as we try to work through and piece this scene back together again. I have some updated information that I want to make sure everybody has. At about 9:42 this morning, we received a call of a runaway juvenile. After speaking with the mom began to piece together bits and pieces of information over an extended period of time. The information that she was gathering and conveying to us began to elevate the threat level that we were perceiving with this information. She believed her son was suicidal, and she began to share information that several of her weapons were missing. Her vehicle was missing, in addition to her son. She also said that her son was with a companion, and that they were dressed in camo, and that is not consistent with what we would typically see from somebody that is suicidal. That began to trigger a larger threat assessment picture. Our threat management unit began to take the tips and leads that we had and utilize the technology we have available to us. Our license plate readers was at the top of that list. We began to have, we noted that there were hits with the vehicle down in Fashion Valley. We dispatched officers into the area of the mall as a possible location that was a threat. We also gathered information that one of the individuals was associated in some form or fashion with Madison High School. We alerted the school police department, and we dispatched officers into the area of Madison High School. While we were gathering this information and we were trying to zero in on where these individuals were at, we received the call at approximately 11:43 that there was an active shooter at the Islamic Center. Officers were in the area, still talking with mom, trying to piece together where they might be, the locations that she felt that they would be at. And that was just a few blocks away. Those officers, once they heard what was happening at the Islamic Center, immediately dispatched themselves to the mosque. And just to recap what we talked about earlier, when officers arrived on scene, they came across, in some form or fashion, 3 deceased individuals, victims. One was a security guard at the center.
Was he the big guy?
We'll get some questions in just a minute, sir. Thank you. Because of what the officers were encountering, and because we know that this is a large gathering facility with kids, with adults, with community members from throughout our county, officers immediately began to enter the facility, utilizing our active shooter protocol, looking for a suspect or two. At the same, and in about the same time as they were making entry and searching through the facility, room by room, we received calls of a vehicle a couple blocks away that was shooting at a landscaper. The landscaper is going to be okay, but we are still investigating that scene. It appears he may have been shot in the helmet that deflected and saved his life, but that is not totally confirmed at this point. A couple blocks away from there, we also received a call where a community member reported our 2 suspects in a vehicle, and it appeared they had gunshot wounds, and upon our arrival, we determined they were deceased. We are in the process of serving search warrants that will continue tonight and on into the days ahead. We're going to continue following any leads and any information that comes forward, as we're all focused on figuring out how this happened and what could we have done to prevent it. I will end by saying it's not a cliche. If you see something, if you hear something, if you know something, that is an integral part of preventing things like this from happening, and it's an integral part for us to be able to take that information, utilize the tools that we have to try to prevent something like this from happening. So with that, I'm going to bring up Mark Remley from the FBI to discuss a little bit more information.
Thank you all for coming, and thank you, Chief. My name is Mark Remley. I am the Special Agent in charge of the FBI San Diego Field Office. As was reported earlier, 3 adults have lost their lives in today's senseless act of violence. We also know the 2 teenage subjects responsible are also deceased. The FBI is determined to uncover all the facts associated with this incident and learn why this shooting occurred at the Islamic Center of San Diego. Here's what we know at this time after our preliminary assessment and working closely with our law enforcement partners to gather evidence. Victim specialists deployed to the Reunification Center at 4125 Hathaway in San Diego. We're also having additional victim services personnel deploy from our headquarters in Washington, D.C. to assist with the families that have been impacted. Our bomb techs have cleared the vehicle associated with the subjects. We are in the process of interviewing family and friends of the subjects, and evidence response teams are gathering all the evidence from the scene for review. We will process everything as quickly but as meticulously as we can. We again thank you for your patience as we work through the scene. The FBI stands with the communities we serve, and our hearts weigh heavy for those killed and everyone who's subjected to this violence today. Shooting incidents like this not only impact those within the immediate vicinity, but everyone in the community also feels the effects. We will continue to coordinate with our law enforcement partners and work closely with them for as long as it takes until we understand what happened. We will leave no stone unturned. We thank the public for your continued cooperation. As we continue to work through this active investigation, we ask that you send photos, videos, or any visual evidence or information you may have to fbi.gov/Islamic Center of San Diego shooting. As I mentioned earlier, no piece of information is too small. Everything helps us gather all the relevant evidence we need to better understand why this horrific incident occurred. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to the mayor for some comments.
Thank you.
Fucking direct result of your leadership! Your leadership! Our Muslim brothers and sisters have been talking to you for how long? You have to fucking listen to them, Todd. Just like you did with ICE.
It's
you were
Trump.
pulled in
It's Trump.
ICE.
Hate
You were
speech.
pulled in Zionist
It's Trump.
propaganda.
Hate speech.
And you'll keep doing it as long as it lines your fucking pockets, won't it? Show something. Worse approval rating than a fascist dictator with shit in his pants.
Today, our city was shaken by a violent act of hate here at the Islamic Center of San Diego, and my heart is with every person that is impacted by this horrific tragedy. No one in our city should live in fear because of their identity, their faith, or their place of learning. I'm grateful to the San Diego Police Department, our San Diego Fire Rescue Department, and our partners at the local, state, and federal level, all of whom showed up here to help with this investigation and this response and help to bring this threat to an end. This tragedy is particularly hurtful to our Muslim community as it comes together at the start of the Dhul Hijjah, one of Islam's holiest periods leading up to the Hajj and the Eid al-Adha, a time of deep faith, reflection, and unity. Hate has no home in San Diego, Islamophobia has no home in San Diego. An attack on any San Diegan is an attack on all San Diegans, and we will not stand for it in America's finest city. Let there be no misunderstanding. For anyone who would seek to bring this kind of violence to this city, you will be met with the full force of our law enforcement partnerships. Anyone who seeks to do harm here will understand the response will be swift and you will be brought to justice. In the meantime, I want to assure San Diegans, in particular our Muslim brothers and sisters, the San Diego Police Department will be guarding all of our local houses of worship with additional presence to assure your safety during this very, very tragic time. We'll be guarding other houses of worship and making sure that we anticipate and try and prevent the very worst. We didn't meet that mark today, but I have deep gratitude to the security officer who was here, whose actions and heroism undoubtedly saved lives. And I'm grateful to every law enforcement individual who ran toward this call to help bring these people to justice. My prayers and my thoughts and our whole hearts community is with the Islamic Center of San Diego and all Muslim San Diegans. With that, I'll turn it back to our chief.
Before I open up to questions, we're a little over 5 hours outside of this incident. Understand the complexity of and the dynamics of a situation like this and the emotions that are without a doubt behind everything that's going on. Much of what else there is to answer is currently being investigated, and I cannot go into some of those details. But I will do my best to try to make sure that you guys have the information you need moving forward. So with that, I will open up to some questions. Yes, sir.
Earlier that we have sources.
Hang on. Trevor, go ahead.
We have sources who say that there were anti-Islamic writings found inside the vehicle. You talked about how you received information from his mother as well as the organization. Is any of that information indicative of how he might be targeting the Islamic Center or Muslims?
Yeah, we're actively investigating this as a hate crime. There are details and information that we are investigating as to exactly what those what the hate speech or the hate words were that were conveyed. Some of that is going to have to take more time to develop further to see where that information's coming from. But yes, it's being investigated as a hate crime at this point. There was definitely hate rhetoric that was involved.
That was found inside it was involved or was found inside?
Involved.
Okay.
I'll leave it at that for now. Yes.
Chief, what about the security guard? We had heard earlier reports that he engaged with these guys in some gunfight. Is that true?
It's still preliminary. We're still looking into that. We do believe the security guard was able to help at least minimize the situation to the front area of the mosque. Until we know more, I don't want to speculate, but at this point I think it's fair to say his actions were heroic, and undoubtedly he saved lives today. Yes, ma'am. I don't have details, but yes, the call came in as a runaway, and then it kind of elevated as mom began to kind of piece together what she was finding with her son being missing. She she realized that she was missing weapons, multiple weapons. Her vehicle was missing. There are details that she was beginning to develop a bigger picture as to what she was dealing with, was conveying that to our folks, and we were trying to put that together and get out in front of this as quickly as we could.
And did she specifically find a suicide note there?
She found some note left by him. What that note looks like, what that note says, I'm not going to disclose right now. Yes, sir.
Search warrants were issued. Did you say where those warrants were issued? What they're looking for?
Search warrants that we're going to be serving, I'm not going to put that information out right now. No.
Can you release the name of the victims?
Some of that information, that's what we're actively looking and investigating right now. Obviously, we have a lot of questions is what led up to this moment, and that will be ongoing in this investigation as we move forward.
How far inside the teenagers were able to get in?
I'm sorry?
How far the teenagers were able to get in?
I'm not sure at this point.
Are you able to share more about the other victims? What is you already be able to share any more about the other victims?
We've just basically notified family of those victims. We're not going to put out their identity right now. We will put that information out here in the days ahead. But for now, we're not putting that information out. We're trying to protect kind of what we have. There's more work to be done, and we want to make sure that we're preserving some of that for the moment. Yes, ma'am.
Specific identifying information, but can you tell us anything about their roles at the Islamic Center?
I'm going to let Imam Taha answer that type of question. I don't know for sure. I don't know for sure.
Is there anything more about the relationship between these? Are there 17 and 19 the suspects?
17
Is it 18?
and 18. Yeah, I think it's 18. And then I need to correct that. I think I put out earlier it was 19. I believe it's 18.
Okay, we need to confirm. Do we know the relationship between the two of them?
No.
And they both were at the high school? Both are students at the high school?
Unknown. At least one, but unknown about the other one.
Chief, is it true that in the past the Islamic Center has also received different threats, and when there's a crime, hate from around the country, they are on alert?
It just in general? Well, I think it's fair to say that all religious facilities across this country, around the world, in today's world, are well aware of the risks that are associated. It's an unfortunate reality of the world we live in today. But I would say absolutely, everybody feels that insecurity.
More about the hate crime investigation? Were these materials anti-Islamic? Were they anti-immigrant? Can you share anything more about those proposals?
Well, first, let me make sure I'm clear. There was no specific threat, especially no specific threat to the Islamic Center. It was just general hate kind of speech that I think covered a wide gamut. I don't want to go into any of the specifics at this point. Again, we are still actively investigating this as we speak, but it was more generalized.
What was the relationship between the teenager and that student there?
In some form or capacity, he was associated with the school as a student. Exactly what that capacity is, we're not sure of just yet. So the question is, was there a specific threat to the high school? There was no specific threat to any facility or any place with what we knew. There was generalized hate rhetoric and speech. Mom believed that her son was suicidal, but the additional bits of information led us to believe that there was a bigger threat picture here that we needed to consider. One person that's suicidal is not going to take 3 weapons from a location. Those little bits of information were significant and important that triggered a much bigger threat assessment that began to bring additional investigators in to utilize the technology that we have available to try to get out in front of what we feared would be coming. But there was no specific threat to this center or any religious facility or any school or any mall in any way. I want to make sure that's clear. We don't get that wrong.
You spoke about the landscaper who was shot at. Is that confirmed that these shootings are related, or is that something you're still investigating?
We're still investigating, but yes, we do believe that's all associated with the larger picture of today's events. It's not. They're not separate.
The names of two.
Let me, sir, go ahead.
So, Chief, I want to know, and hopefully watching this too, how do you plan on protecting these sites of worship? What are you stating your officers to protect?
Yeah. So, first of all, this is why we need the community. This is a partnership. Public safety is a shared responsibility. It is important that people share information when they see, hear, or know something that pertains to threats of violence. That is what allows us to filter through who is going to cause harm and who is not. So that information is priority one.
You know when you're going to reopen the mosque?
I'll let Imam Taha speak to that.
And Chief, just a clarification, the mother that you're speaking about, mother of the younger juvenile or the older one?
The younger.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, listen, folks, we'll sit here all night and go question and answer. We will provide more information when more information is available and we have more of the information confirmed that we're now starting to speculate on. I want to make sure that you have the details thus far so that you understand exactly what we were responding to, what we were dealing with. And I'll close by saying this. Our hearts go out to the families, obviously the greater Muslim community. We're one city, and we're one community. As police chief, I am grateful that we have police officers and sheriff's deputies from throughout this county that dropped what they were doing and didn't do just what they were trained to do. They did what we hired them to do, to step into harm's way, to be willing to run towards gunfire, to protect people they don't even know. And so with that, thank you for your patience, and we will be back out in the days ahead with more information. Thank you.
Good evening from the newsroom. We have just been watching authorities in San Diego briefing reporters on the shooting at the city's largest mosque. Now, it could have been easily worse. The center also has a school on its grounds. There were kids playing outside at the time. When police arrived, they found a security guard and 2 men dead. A short time later, they discovered 2 more who they believed to be the shooters, both also dead. Their gunshot wounds apparently self-inflicted. Again, officials have just spoken to reporters. CNN's Kyung La is at the scene as she joins us now. So we heard authorities say, Kyung, that they received a call from the mother of one of the shooters this morning. What more have you learned about exactly what happened?
That she had discovered some hate speech, some generalized hate speech, not targeting any particular institution, but it was alarming enough that she found it to be suicidal and threatening enough that she reached out to law enforcement. What you're hearing behind me is this press conference is still going on with other members of the community, but I'm going to keep explaining what authorities say they have been able to put together is that younger person, that younger suspect, the 17-year-old, then connected with someone, either a friend who was 18 or 19, and they came to this mosque. The mosque is just, this is a press conference right over here, the mosque is just over my right shoulder, and that is where law enforcement found 3 different adult men who had been shot. The 2 suspects were making their way through this middle-class community. They came across a landscaper, engaged with the landscaper who he was unarmed. They appear to have hit him in some capacity, but he's doing okay. And then authorities did catch up with them, and the 2 suspects, 17, 18-ish, the police chief said, had died by self-inflicted gunshot wounds. So that's the very latest that we've been able to piece together. One other thing, Anderson, that they are treating this as a hate crime in large part because of some writings found on one of the weapons. They say at this point, this is what they know. They are going to continue to investigate this and try to share more as they learn, because this happened just mere hours ago, Anderson.
And Kim, I know you were able to speak with a friend of the security guard who was killed. What did he have to say?
It's really important to remember that this isn't just a mosque, this is a community center, and this is also where children, young children in 3rd grade and younger were going to school, and there was a security guard standing out front, and that security guard is a friend of a man who you're going to hear from, and I want you to listen to what he says.
I truly know in my heart from knowing that man that he was sacrificing his life and took that bullet knowing that I'd rather take it than the kids. And that is what makes me emotional.
And the important thing that he wanted to add, that man, his name is Sam. He is a father of two who go to school connected with the mosque, and the school connected with the mosque. He said that he gets to put his kids to bed tonight. He gets to tuck them in, but the security guard, who also has children, that he can't do that. And so that's something he doesn't want to be left unsaid, that a man took a bullet to protect so many children here in this community, Anderson.
Kim, I appreciate it. Thank you. Joining us now, two of our law enforcement analysts, John Miller and Jonathan Wackrow. John Miller, you've been speaking with law enforcement sources. What have they told you about the two gunmen? What may have motivated them?
Well, these are kids, 17, 18 years old. One of them, as we're learning now, left what is in effect a suicide note, but we are told by law enforcement sources that it also had references to racial pride. It seems that based on the targeting and the fact that there was hate speech written on one of the weapons recovered, where the two young men took their own lives after escaping the scene of the shooting, that this fits into a pattern that we know fairly well. Writing hate speech on the weapon, leaving the notes, the target selection of a mosque, shooting at a landscaper at random during the getaway. Very similar to the New Zealand attack from 2019 by Brenton Tarrant, who in that case killed 51 people and shot 40 more, where he wrote hate speech all over the weapons. In the Buffalo case in 2022, Peyton Gendron, he wrote hate speech all over the weapons, even mentioning Brenton Tarrant. I wouldn't be surprised if you saw one or both of those names turn up in the writings in this case. This is developing into a hate crime that is probably going to be linked to an alt-right culture of white nationalism, white supremacy, and what they call the Great Replacement theory, where people act out violently, murderously, on the idea that immigrants from other countries, that people who weren't born here, that people who don't look like white Europeans are overtaking whites and their opportunities. And this is something that, ironically, wasn't even mentioned in the White House counterterrorism strategy that was released last week, right-wing violent extremism.
Jonathan Wackrow is here. How unusual is it to have two people apparently working together in this? I was trying to think, John mentioned the New Zealand attack. Obviously, there was the Columbine a long time ago that was school-related. There was the attack in New York, the bomb throwing involving two people.
It's very anomalous, right? And I think that there are a lot of factors that are present in this matter that are anomalous. It's the fact that there were two attackers. Typically, we oftentimes refer to as a lone gunman or a lone actor, but they're oftentimes influenced by other people. Here we have two people who were engaged in the attack. But their ages, 17 and 19 years old, it's not normal for them to wake up and decide to go out and kill somebody, right? So something preceded this, and this is right what the commissioner was getting to, is that there was some sort of radicalization that they went through, that they felt it was right for them to go and launch this attack against this Islamic center, this symbol of that community in San Diego. That, again, needs to be looked at with a microscope to really understand, did that radicalization come online? Were they radicalizing each other through this Christian nationalism, this white nationalism movement that John was just talking about, or these other factors? So what we do know as a denominator, hate is the motivator here. It was the motivation for their attack. But we need to get better and smarter at how this radicalization happened so quickly and happened really in silence. This didn't basically follow the pattern of violence that we've seen, this pathway to violence where it's grievance, ideation, planning, this whole attack cycle goes through before they launch. These are people that literally got up, took some guns from home, dressed in camouflage, and went out and launched this attack.
Breaking news, we've got some new details coming in about the deadly shooting at the largest mosque in San Diego tonight. 3 killed, 2 suspects also dead of self-inflicted gunshot wounds. Now, officials say that there was hate speech scrawled on one of the weapons used in the shooting. And now police departments across the country are increasing security at mosques and other houses of worship. Kyung Law is there. She's on the ground out front in San Diego. And Kyung, just as we were watching this all unfold, the mass police presence there, so much concern. And then, of course, sadly and tragically, multiple lives lost. What more are you learning about what happened?
Well, I can tell you is that as we're driving up here, you are seeing parents picking up children, and we're talking about really small children, preschool age kids, kindergarten age kids, and the parents have this look, as you said, Aaron, of palpable fear. There is a lot of concern here, especially when they hear those words that this could be a hate crime. As far as the information that we're trying to gather right now, I'm going to kind of walk you through this crowd. You can see that there's a really large contingent of press here, and then over there in the center, what we are expecting to hear from very, very soon is the latest update from the FBI, from the police, the local police here, as well as religious leaders. And I just also want to have you pivot this way, Greg. This is where the mosque is. We're actually quite close to the mosque, and when I've been talking to people who know this mosque, who have grown up here, I talked to one man who went to kindergarten at the school inside that mosque. He said that it's really, even though this is the largest place, this feels like a very small community. And so let's take a look at this community. Where did all of this unfold? And then if you try not to trip here, this is Clairemont Mesa. It's a neighborhood here in San Diego, and it's a community I actually know quite well. This is a blended community known primarily back in the day when I lived here in San Diego as a predominantly Asian American community, but it's really become very diverse. But you can see these houses. This is a normal middle class community, so to see parents walking with their kids, it's not unusual. So how did this unfold? From that mosque that you saw, all of this unfolded here in this neighborhood, and then the two suspects, from what we understand and have been able to piece together so far, somehow made it into that neighborhood just several blocks away. So we don't know if they were traveling by foot or by car. It's very hard to piece this together right now, but that is what we are hoping to learn, Aaron, as we figure out just a few more details. The big question, let's start with the victims. 3 men. At this point, there's a lot of people saying there's probably people they know at the mosque. They don't know at this point if they're educators or there has been a convenience store that was in there. There are a lot of people who use this community center as a place not just of worship but of community, so they don't know who those 3 people are. And then the larger question is, who is the 17-year-old and the 19-year-old man? And at this point, they just don't know yet. We're waiting to hear the very latest, and we are anticipating, Aaron, that this information could be coming very soon, as this press conference is expected to start any minute now. I mean, we're running about 25 minutes late. Authorities said that they thought it was going to happen at 7 o'clock Eastern. I can see some officers kind of gathering near the mics, but it does look like they're being held up for some reason.
So I mean, I guess the question is what, and I know we're waiting to take that as well live. Kyung, I mentioned one of the things we knew that the so far police had released, that there was hate speech scrawled on one of the weapons, but it sounds like, other than the general age of the suspects and that they died by self-inflicted wounds, that we don't know much more at this point?
We don't know much more, and we don't know the landscaper who the San Diego police officer, the police chief, mentioned in the last news briefing, what the landscaper had to do with this, if anything at all, or just happened to be there. Thankfully, that landscaper not seriously injured. There was a miss. But yes, I mean, it's all of this. Who are these people? What was the motive? And it's really important for the parents who are picking up their kids, and by now, most of the kids have left the school. They have started to clear everybody out of here, and that's really the big question: is what and why.
All right, Kyung, thank you. Please stay with us. I know you're sort of there with others trying to get that press conference live. But keep us honest, and I'm going to keep bringing you in here as long as I can before they start speaking. I just want to also add Greg Erie to the conversation, former FBI special agent in charge of the Newark field office, and he was also an FBI domestic terror operations section chief. So, Greg, when you just listened to the latest that Kyung is reporting there on the ground, talking about the community and the mosque and the role it served, the very, incredibly young age of the children inside. Sources are saying all we know is that there was this hate speech scrawled on one of the weapons, and that the suspects were teenagers, late teenagers, 17 and 19 perhaps is the ages we're being given. We'll see if we get an update in just a couple of moments. But what does this say to you so far?
Aaron, more questions than answers right now. It's very, very early in the investigation. And as the reporter was saying before this, we're asking the right questions. What's the motivation? What happened when they entered? These are the things that investigators will pick apart and build a timeline and say, what exactly caused this? But right now, even the ages of the shooters are in question. And I'm sure there are people on their way to the houses, talk to the families, talk to the relatives, the neighbors. Why did this happen? What was this motivation for this tragic event?
And we do understand a firearm was taken from one of the suspects' parents' homes, right? So, such that we know it right now. We don't know details about who they are, but we know that. Unfortunately, in horrible tragedies in this country, guns being obtained in the home is not something that's unusual. But what questions do you have from that?
Again, what led them to perpetrate this attack? And at the home, was the firearm secured? Was this something that could have been prevented? I am very, very interested in the age of these two shooters, the alleged age of them, 17 and 19. How do you get radicalized so quickly to commit a mass shooting? Were they familiar with this area? Had they been in that mosque before? Again, a lot of questions here that the investigators are delving into as we speak.
Right, and I know obviously the law enforcement presence, as we said, was simply overwhelming and perhaps able to save many, many lives.
We do begin with a shooting at a mosque in California, where at least 3 people were killed, according to San Diego police. San Diego's police chief said 2 suspects were also found dead and that they are treating the shooting as a hate crime. Have a listen to the FBI special agent in charge.
What we know at this time is that there are 3 deceased adult males, and those are the presumed victims at this time. On behalf of the FBI, we extend our sincerest condolences to the family and friends of the victims of this tragic incident. There were 2 subjects, both teenagers, and both are confirmed deceased. I want to thank our local law enforcement partners for their quick response that undoubtedly saved the additional loss of life.
The Islamic Center of San Diego is the largest mosque in San Diego. It includes a school, and you see the children there being led out by teachers. The director says that all students and staff are safe. The mosque's imam had this message for his congregation.
We have never experienced a tragedy like this before. And at this moment, all what I can say is sending our prayers and standing in solidarity with all the families in our community here.
Just a short time ago, President Trump called this a, quote, terrible situation. Joining me now, retired FBI Special Agent Richard Kolko. Richard, good to have you here. An all too common scene in this country, of course, a shooting. There are victims. And in this case, as police said, they're treating this as a hate crime until they have evidence otherwise. What stands out to you based on what we know so far?
Jim, what stands out to me, and I know it stands out to you too, you've been around a lot of these. We don't know everything yet. The information is changing so quickly. When you just look at this response size of San Diego and other law enforcement, every one of those law enforcement officers has to be debriefed for what intel they have. So there's still a big puzzle that needs to be put together with whatever information is available. I will tell you, something just seems a little unusual about this one, though. 3 deceased at the door to the mosque or outside the mosque. Fortunately, not on the side where the school is, but we haven't heard anything additional about the other two people besides the security person. And then a 17 and 19-year-old cruising the streets, maybe taking some pot shots at a person doing some yard work, and then potentially killing themselves. This is a strange story. We know law enforcement's working hard to try and put these puzzle pieces together. But I've been quizzing my sources as well, and just in the last 15 minutes, the story I've gotten has changed several times, and it will for the next few hours.
Yeah, those details, and again with the proviso that this is early, stood out to me as well. Teenage attackers that may have taken their own lives does not fit a typical profile for an attack such as this, although I suppose, there is some variation. Any explanation that you can come up with?
I'm gonna, everybody's theorizing here or hypothesizing. When you go back and look at these active shooters, these school shooters, and you go back and download and do the research on their computer, you will find almost to a T every single one of them has gone back in time and reviewed school shootings, church shootings, temple, mosque shootings, and somehow they build on that. They fantasize about that. They want to see themselves in that role. This goes all the way back to Columbine. So as soon as we get the identity of these two young men, 17 and 19 years old, law enforcement will be at their homes, going through their computers, cell phones, iPads, whatever digital devices they have, talking to friends, neighbors, associates, if they have them, and learn more about what they did. And did they potentially write anything down? Did they make some threats? Did they write a manifesto? Does somebody else have some inkling that something like this is going to occur? I'm just telling you, I wish I could be better for you right now.
That's enough. That's enough.
Something is very strange.
Yeah. It's early, so we'll continue to follow details. I do want to ask you, because we have seen a rise in anti-Muslim crimes and incidents in the past several years. The Council on American Islamic Relations received 8,000, close to 9,000 complaints across the U.S. last year. Has there been a response from law enforcement, security, et cetera, as a result of those figures?
Well, those, and also on the Jewish side, we know that those have gone up dramatically as well. I know for a fact that the outreach efforts being done, not just by the FBI, but state and local law enforcement, has been just tremendous to try and interact with these different groups, provide the safety and security that they need at their homes of prayer, houses of prayer. And I'm spending some time down in Florida. You drive by the temples, you drive by the mosques anytime. I see a sheriff's deputy's car out there all the time. They're making their presence felt, just to make their presence felt, which is doing what they can to help protect their communities. And that's not just, we saw immediately as soon as this happened in San Diego, California, as far as you can get from New York City. New York NYPD put out a notice that, they're stepping up security at their mosque in New York. So everybody's concerned across the country about this going on. And can this inspire somebody else to do this?
All right, we're following our breaking news. You can see it there, the huge police response in San Diego as there are reports of an active shooter at the Islamic Center of San Diego. Let's bring in Michael Alcazar, retired NYPD detective. Michael, we're now being told or hearing from authorities that this is an active but contained situation. What does that mean?
So they'll tell me that they breached the location. Law enforcement has breached the premises, and they potentially may have identified where the shooter is. So we might be dealing with a barricade shooter. So the goal here is to extract all victims. Hopefully they can move them safely and quickly while they contain the shooter.
We're still working to get details on who those victims may be and what status they might be in. We have not heard many details from law enforcement at this point. In fact, we should go to Josh Campbell because, Josh, I understand you might be learning some new information.
Well, as you were just mentioning there, as far as the containment, what that appears to tell us is that there's no longer a threat beyond the area of the police cordon that we see around that area. What's happening right now on the screen is very important for us to watch. We always glean a lot of information by watching the posture of law enforcement, seeing what they're doing. You're seeing there in the parking lot, there are officers that are staged. But what you're seeing here on the screen, and I want to point out for our viewers that we put this on a delay, that's for officer safety here, is they're going around that area doing what are called room clearing. shootings. They're essentially going, they'll attempt to open a door. You have the first officer there that either opens or breaches the door, and then the rest of the team files in. And this is something that we can likely expect them to do around this large complex. This is something that is often the case whenever you have an active shooter situation. We don't always see it for ourselves, but one of the things that law enforcement has to do before they rule out any ongoing threat is to clear that entire facility, and that's what we're seeing right now. The major question we don't yet know is if there is indeed a suspect, if this was indeed an active shooter. Authorities to this point have been calling it a reported active shooter. What is the status of a potential shooter? Is a person in custody? Was there an exchange of gunfire? That's all the detail right now that we are still waiting to hear. We do know that over the course of about the last 20 minutes, they've been bringing numerous people out of that house of worship. This is a place where Muslims come to worship, according to the mosque. You know, they're 5 times a day they'll come. They have special sermons as well. So it's a very active place where you have people from the Muslim faith in and around the area coming there on any given day. And we saw them coming out, including children. But now we're waiting for details on the particular status of a suspect, if that's indeed the case. And of course, are there any victims? That is something that we're still waiting to hear as well. The final point I'll note is that often in these very active situations, people obviously want information. We want to know, but just look at the law enforcement posture there. Their focus right now, as we can see, is on trying to determine what happened and trying to clear that area. So the information may follow, second to that, but obviously we're continuing to ask authorities about the latest. We're waiting additional information. All the local, state government officials are saying they've been briefed on the situation right now. Everyone is monitoring, again, waiting for those specific details about the nature of what actually occurred.
Yes, and we are being told that we're seeing actually in some of these pictures really nervous parents who are lining the streets. They've obviously gotten word of what has happened at this center that also is home to the Islamic School of San Diego. So you have children of all ages, presumably, in that center. It's a school that is housed on the campus of this center. So a lot of parents incredibly concerned. And there's a reunification center, the San Diego Police Department is reporting, in the off chance that any parents are listening to this, on the Twitter account for the San Diego PD, you can find that information for where that is, that reunification center. Ed, that tells you something. If they're establishing the reunification center, Ed Davis, if you can join us, they're establishing this reunification center. What does that tell you at this point in time?
The reunification center is a vital component of one of these incidents. While the police officers conduct their searches and secure the areas, there are always concerned parents and relatives of the potential victims that are descending on the scene. So the police officers on the perimeter need to stop the advance on the building by concerned people and have a safe place for them to go to congregate, so that, first of all, they're out of the line of fire, but second of all, they're getting updated, immediate information from the scene so that they can be relieved that their relatives are going to be okay. It's a way to put some control in a very chaotic situation, but it also gives you the ability to provide people with reassurance or sometimes tragic information. So there'll be resources sent there on both sides of that equation so that people will be ready to deal with whatever eventuality occurs.
Yeah, I just want to let our viewers know that we're sort of looping some of the images we captured moments ago. These are not live images, in part because there is concern that in an active shooting situation, somebody who's involved in this can flip on CNN and potentially see the scene outside. So these are images taken moments ago, but we understand that this is still an ongoing and active, but as you see on your screen, contained situation at the Islamic Center of San Diego. I want to go back to Michael Alcazar, because you were discussing a moment ago what it means that this is now an active but contained site. Take us through the actual process of clearing rooms in this building and identifying where an active shooter might be.
So law enforcement is trained to push towards where the shooter is, right? And it sounds like by the reporting, they might have identified a shooter. As Josh mentioned before, they don't stop there. They contain one shooter. They're going to continue searching the building. They're going to go room by room, hallway by hallway to identify any possible potential bad actors. And I'm assuming that's what they're doing now. And that's it. And the idea is to contain the shooters, if not take them out, and then protect the safety of the victims on scene.
And Michael, when you say contained, there are certainly a range of possibilities for what that could mean. In terms of the threat level, does it tell us anything?
I mean, if the shooter's contained, that doesn't mean he's not armed. He could just have barricaded himself. That's a situation that usually happens. So if he's contained, the law enforcement, the SWAT, the emergency services responded, are just keeping him at bay until he surrenders or they take him out. So contained doesn't necessarily mean it's a safe situation. It's still volatile and fast moving. So police are doing their due diligence to maintain safety for everybody, while at the same time keeping the shooter contained and at the location. If he's barricaded in a room, perhaps, so they're going to keep him there until they evacuate everybody.
Ed, one of the things that strikes me about these images is the number of police vehicles outside. You could see that for a long stretch, they dot the road that leads into and seemingly surrounds the Islamic Center. I wonder if you can glean something from the size of the response, if it gives you an indication of exactly what may have happened inside the center.
Yes, I've worked with the San Diego police over a long period of time, and it's an enormous police department. And the jurisdiction runs almost down to the Mexico line all the way up to La Jolla. So this is right in the core of that geographic area on the northern end of it. But there are hundreds and hundreds of police cars available to them. And when something like this happens, everybody goes. It's just sort of raising the alarm. Every available resource in the city will head towards here. And I think that's what you're seeing. The question is, how far along in the process are we? Some of the officers and the tactical vehicles appear to be standing down a little bit. As Michael said, that might be a case of the shooter being isolated in a room where he has no easy gunshot capability, and they're just trying to wait him out. Or he may have been killed. He may be in custody. It's hard to say. This is still active. Ambulance is coming in. It's hard to be clear on exactly what's going on inside that building.
Yeah, a range of possibilities. But what we do know is this is a mosque in San Diego, the Islamic Center of San Diego, a very large mosque that is also home to a school, the Islamic School of San Diego. And we have learned from police that there was an active shooter situation. We're now being told, Boris, it's active but contained. But what we're watching here is just a huge police response, and we're getting word about parents lining the street, incredibly concerned because there are a number of kids, obviously, who would be going to school here.
Yeah, as we noted a moment ago, the campus includes the Islamic School of San Diego. From our experts, based on the movements that we've seen from this helicopter video, it appears that law enforcement is in the process of attempting to clear rooms. And as you heard a moment ago, active but contained. It could potentially mean that they've zeroed in on where the shooter is, though they're not ruling out the possibility that there is perhaps more than one perpetrator. A lot of news to get to. Of course, we're going to keep you updated with the latest as the Arena with Casey Hunt begins after a quick break.
News races around the world at breakneck speed. What is the situation now for you? My show brings you the latest news and top news makers.
Pauses in any war. This is good.
Amanpour, weekdays on CNN.
In the hub, where East meets West, CNN Arabic is perfectly placed to find the facts. This is where stories happen.
It's a concern to a lot of us in the region.
Politics, business, culture, real life. As the pace of change moves faster, we ask the important question: what is the truth? This is CNNArabic.com.
I'm Manu Raju on Capitol Hill, and this is CNN.
This is CNN Breaking News.
Breaking news at this hour right now. An active shooter reported at an Islamic center in San Diego. Hi, everyone. I'm Casey Hunt. Welcome to the arena. We're going to continue to follow this developing story. You can see the enormous police presence at the Islamic Center in San Diego. We're going to go live to CNN security correspondent Josh Campbell, who has been following along here. Josh, what do we know? What don't we know at this hour?
Well, there's a lot of information we don't yet know, but we just did hear from San Diego police who say that the scene there is active, but what they're calling contained. And that word contained is very important. That signals to us that whatever the potential threat that may have been there, they don't believe goes beyond the large cordon that you see of just hundreds, it looks like, law enforcement officers that have responded from in and around the San Diego area. Again, this is reports of an active shooter at the Islamic Center of San Diego. This is in the northern part of the city. Now, the details, as I mentioned, are very limited, but we did see this mass influx of law enforcement at the largest mosque there in San Diego. And earlier, and I'll tell our viewers right now, what you're watching on screen, and as we see the officers there moving around the building, we have purposely put that on a delay, and that is for officer safety purposes as they go around the building. But we see this appears to be a methodical clearing of that facility where you have the tactical teams that will stage outside. They'll breach an entry or open a doorway, and then the team goes in. This is typically what we see in the wake of reports of shooting incidents, where they have to go through, again, the entire property to ensure that there are no additional threats, that there are no additional victims. There's still very little we have right now on a potential suspect or whether indeed shots were fired at all. Again, authorities were saying that there were reports of an active shooter, so we're awaiting those details, also waiting information on any potential victims. because tragically, as we have seen in so many of these incidents, that you have people that are impacted, maybe not even physically, but psychologically. We've seen on our affiliate images there, you see numerous people being brought out by police that included children that were there inside that house of worship. According to the Islamic Center, they have the regular 5-day prayers that Muslims adhere to. They have special services that take place. So very much an active place where people in and around the community come to worship. Now that their day obviously rocked by reports of gunfire here. Now we're seeing again, from our affiliate, people being brought out in a very methodical fashion. Still no indication on any number of victims, any potential information about the suspect. We do know that a lot of these houses of worship, both of the Islamic as well as the Jewish faith, often will have security on site for congregants that come in order to ensure their safety. And so there's a lot we're waiting to hear about what actually transpired here, but we know just dozens and dozens, if not hundreds, of police there on the scene.
Yeah, Josh, can I just follow up by asking you about that? I mean, it is visually incredibly striking to see the sheer number of cars. Can you offer any perspective from your years both working in law enforcement and also covering it for us here at CNN as to what this may indicate, how often something like this may happen?
Yeah, well, when I was with the FBI, I worked closely with the San Diego Police Department, and this is an agency that has a very large area to cover, but they have a lot of personnel, highly trained, but also they work very closely with the multiple law enforcement agencies that are around that area, the local city, the county, as well as the California Highway Patrol. So anytime you get reports that there is any potential shooter, you'll have this surge of law enforcement that responds, and some agencies will what they call self-deploy. They'll go just in case that they are actually needed. And so we're seeing visually on our screen what appears to be the result of that, where you have just dozens and dozens of law enforcement officers that have responded here outside the Islamic city. They have part of the interstate exit now completely blocked off because it's filled with law enforcement officers that are there on scene. Final point I'll say is that while they have, it appears, more resources than they would ever need there on site, we can tell a lot from the posture of law enforcement. I'll warn people that if you are in the San Diego area, take your cues from law enforcement until they give the all clear. Listen to them. Don't go to this area. But as we kind of analyze some of these pictures, we no longer see the emergent kind of phase of this where you have officers rushing in, coming in, lights and sirens, an influx of ambulances often. We're not seeing that right now, which means that if there was indeed an emergent phase here, if there were indeed shots fired, that has been resolved to some degree. We don't yet know whether the person has been arrested, if there's indeed a shooter, whether the person has barricaded. All authorities are saying right now that it has been contained, but so far no all clear given yet from authorities.
All right, Josh, stand by for us. I know you're going to continue to cover this breaking situation, but I want to bring in Steve Moore. He's a CNN law enforcement contributor and retired FBI special agent. And Steve, we also were just seeing, and I think we can show, people were seen walking away from the mosque here. They were holding each other's hands. They were being escorted by police officers. This was from video that was shot by the CNN affiliate KFMB. There were also nervous parents that were seen lining the street outside the building, hoping to be reunited with their children. There is a K through 12 school on the site of this center. Can you talk a little bit about what these agents are facing here? We, of course, are working with limited information about what has happened, but this is, of course, being reported as an active situation.
Yeah, and Josh's description of the event was very succinct and very accurate. So jumping from there is right now there is in an active shooter there is no such thing technically as contained, because as long as the person is armed and has access to potential victims, then that containment isn't part of the strategy. So what that tells me is they do not have at this moment an active threat to any hostages that they are aware of. There's no gunfire. I mean, as we saw in Uvalde, tragically, they heard gunfire and didn't do anything. Here, they're not hearing gunfire. Here, they're not hearing an emergent threat. So they are holding position, trying to figure out the reason for the report, whether there are any victims, and basically trying to understand what's going on in there. But you can't just walk in and say, hey, who's in charge here? You have to clear room by room by room by room. And that's why it's always helpful to have what appears to, a civilian to be a surplus of officers.
Steve,
a
let me
building
pause
like
you
that
for just a
with-
second. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but please stand by. Josh Campbell has some breaking news to report. Josh?
Well, as this often is the case, after the emergent phase here, we continue to get information. We're now hearing from the San Diego Police Department. They're saying that the threat at the Islamic Center has been, quote, neutralized. Before, there were reports of an active shooter. Now they're confirming that there was indeed a threat, and now this individual has been what they're calling neutralized. We've seen in past incidents that word neutralized can mean various different things. It could mean that the person has been apprehended. It could also mean that the suspect was engaged by law enforcement with gunfire. Sometimes people take their own life before they're about to be arrested. But nevertheless, that is important news for the people there in and around that community. They're saying that there is no longer a threat, Casey. That person, in their words, has been neutralized. We're, of course, waiting additional information on who that person was, what actually occurred, and any potential number of victims.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Josh, at this hour, all we know is that the police department has said that the person, the threat has been neutralized, but we don't know exactly what transpired or anything about potential casualties here.
That's right.
Right.
Absolutely. We're waiting that information.
Steve Moore, if you're still with us, can I just get you to weigh in on what Josh is reporting here? And of course, we're updating kind of our reporting because this is just coming in here that the San Diego Police Department has told reporters, has put out publicly that the threat, and this is the quote, the threat at the Islamic Center has been neutralized.
Okay, that's a nice way of saying I believe that the suspect is no longer physically capable of becoming a threat. If they had arrested him, there would have been, I believe, a statement saying that he was in custody. And it also indicates that it wasn't a false alarm, which, some people might suspect when there's really nothing going on that they can see operationally. So apparently from what we're seeing, there was an active shooter there, or there was an active threat. That threat has been, I believe, though I can't confirm to you that it was physically stopped. And that right now they are in kind of a mop-up phase, but a mop-up phase is extremely complicated because you don't know at this point whether there was just one shooter, if there was a shooter, if there was more than one assailant, whether there were devices left behind. So even though you have your apparent threat neutralized, you have to go through as if there could be another assailant or other hazards that were left behind by this threat, as they call it.
Right. Well, and of course, I want to make sure that we are thinking of the people who are so worried about their loved ones who may have been here, just as we talk about what exactly it is that law enforcement is facing. In here, we can only hope and pray that that does not mean that there have been significant casualties. But Josh Campbell, I know you have some updated information for us. What do you know?
Well, sadly, we're learning there has been a fatality. This reporting coming from our colleagues Mark Morales and Holmes Lybrand. There was indeed a shooting incident that occurred here at the Islamic Center. Law enforcement sources tell them, and again, at least one individual was killed during this incident. We don't know the status of any other potential victims in this case. We don't know if this is someone who just showed up there completely unaffiliated with this area, opening fire, or what the details are. We're awaiting that information. But sadly, we are learning at least one person killed. We're also learning, as you were mentioning there, from law enforcement, the San Diego police, there is no longer a threat as the suspect here has been, quote, neutralized in their words. Of course, there will now be a massive investigation here to try to determine, first of all, who this individual is. The first thing authorities will want to do after there is no longer a lingering threat is to what's called FID this person, fully identify them. Who is this person? Sometimes that's done very quickly if someone actually has identification on them, the suspect. Sometimes we've seen in past incidents where a gunman will come to a location without any identification. And so that obviously makes it more difficult for authorities to try to identify who this person is. They'll also be looking around this area to try to determine how the person actually, actually got there. Is there a vehicle? Again, we've seen no indication this is the case just yet, but we've seen in past incidents where if there is indeed a suspect vehicle that is identified, authorities will want to fully clear that vehicle, often case using bomb technicians as well, the bomb disposal units, just to make sure there is no potential threat inside that vehicle. And then if there is indeed a vehicle, they can often be a treasure trove of clues to try to, again, identify the person. And then the last, in all of this, after they determine who this person is, of course, is to get to the why. What was the motive? We're talking here, of course, about a house of worship with the Islamic faith. We know that we are in a heightened threat environment as it relates to political violence in this country. And so a lot of questions that we still have, even as we await authorities to give us the full picture on whether there are any additional victims. We know based on some of our affiliate coverage there that we've been watching, authorities have been going through that building very methodically. We can only imagine looking for additional threats, looking, Casey, for any potential victims.
Josh, can I ask you again, drawing on the wide experience that you have here, if we know there was one fatality, when we start to learn about these events and how they transpire, is it usually that we're hearing that, I mean, if you say a threat has been neutralized, it's possible that the person in question, the fatality in question, is the aggressor in this case? Obviously, it may not be. I'd be interested to hear you speak a little bit to that. And does what they know or not know about someone in this kind of a situation drive the early response? I mean, this sort of overwhelming response that we are seeing here. If this was, say, a disgruntled employee at this location, as we've seen in some, shooting incidents in the past, would we be seeing this kind of response? Or does this indicate that we may be looking at something that's an outsider and with a troubling motive?
No, it's a very important question. And, once they are able to actually identify someone, they will then be able to work with the Islamic Center there to try to determine, was this someone who was affiliated or was it someone who was completely unaffiliated? That would be an important piece of information. Also, sadly, what we've seen as well is that anyone who may have been in that area whenever this happened and may have potentially seen or heard what occurred is now a potential witness. And, we've seen these images, just heartbreaking images of children being walked out of there under the supervision and protection of law enforcement to try to get them out of the building as police did their searching. But authorities will want to know, did anyone recognize who this person was? Did this individual say anything, any type of utterance, anything, anti-Islamic, for example, again, to try to get to any potential motive. And often cases, sadly, in these situations, people will try to make sense of what is often very senseless, especially if we're talking about targeted violence here. But we have seen in those instances where people are proud of what they're about to do and may actually leave behind some kind of evidence indicating about what's to take place. Again, we are in the early stages of this. We don't yet know whether this was someone affiliated with their house of worship, whether this was someone specifically targeting the Islamic faith, specifically targeting someone there. A lot of questions, but authorities come in this with their eyes wide open, leave everything on the table until they start narrowing down the identity, narrowing down the motive.
Yeah. All right, stand by for us, Josh, and of course, let us know as you get more reporting on this live unfolding situation. I want to check in now with Jonathan Rackrow. He is CNN law enforcement analyst and a former Secret Service agent. Jonathan, thanks very much for being here. You've, of course, been listening to our coverage. We still have few details at this hour, but of course, law enforcement in the process of responding to this, still this enormous, overwhelming presence. What are some of the things that you would be thinking about were you one of the people responding here?
Well, the first thing that comes to mind is that this is a house of worship, and what we've seen is that houses of worship, regardless of the religion, are targets of opportunity, and the reason being is they represent soft targets combined with this symbolic significance and open access that makes them really an attractive target for a hostile actor. And again, we're seeing that happen today. So when you see this overwhelming police response, that's not a coincidence. That is by design, because they know that these attacks oftentimes are very well planned. You typically see some sort of pre-attack surveillance and monitoring before an attack to understand the very specific points of vulnerability. Law enforcement knows this, so they rehearse and they work with houses of worship across the country to really coordinate what a response like this would look like. And it's even more critical when you have this house of worship associated with a school. So you now have children that are there. So that brings a different dynamic that law enforcement has to be aware of. They most likely have trained with this, with this location among, many others in the area on how a active shooter, hostile aggressor response would look like by law enforcement. But right now, it sounds like the emergent and critical phases are over. So now we're starting to go into that recovery phase. There's still, as Josh was saying, there's a lot we do not know. We don't know what's going on inside the building. Most likely they're doing their secondary and third searches to ensure that there are no other threats that are present. But also at the same time, this is a crime scene. So they got to start preserving all items of evidentiary value. They need to try to identify, who this individual is to ensure that there's no secondary attack either at this location or any other house of worship in the area.
Jonathan, thank you very much for that. Stand by for me. I want to go back to Josh Campbell, who has some more breaking information about the unfolding nature of this investigation. Josh?
Well, we're learning for clarity. We were talking earlier about the person that we reported was indeed killed in the shooting. We're learning that was a victim. So we're, again, trying to gather additional information about whether anyone else may have been impacted. We're also now learning that in addition to this massive wave of law enforcement that we've seen show up, the ATF is now on scene as well. According to that agency, special agents from their Los Angeles division there in San Diego surged to this area. They bring a lot to the table in a shooting investigation, because one question will be, obviously, what type of firearm was used here? Was it obtained legally? And that is something that the ATF will work to determine. They can actually analyze a firearm, analyze the actual ammunition, compare that to other firearms and ammunition that it has in this massive database to determine whether this was used in any other potential crime in the past. They do what's called firearm tracing, again, to try to determine the legality of this individual actually obtaining that weapon. Why is that important? Because if this person is indeed alive and will be charged, that could be an additional charge. Whether the person has been neutralized by law enforcement in the sense that they're no longer alive, there will be a question about how they got the weapon. And if indeed, as we've seen in past cases, someone assisted this person unlawfully in doing that, they could face potential legal jeopardy as well. Again, those are all possibilities. We don't have any indication that that will indeed happen. But all of those resources now on scene as they move from the emergent phase, authorities saying the suspect is neutralized, now very much into the investigation in earnest to determine who this person was, why he did it, and rule out whether anyone else was involved.
So Josh, just to circle back and recap, as we've been having this conversation live for anyone that may just be joining us, you've reported that the San Diego police have said, one, the threat at the Islamic Center of San Diego has been neutralized. You've also reported here that there is one victim, and this someone, the victim of the person who was the aggressor here. Can you talk a little bit about the threats that have been facing houses of worship? And I think it's worth underscoring here that this center is the site not just of a mosque, not just a place of worship, but also a school. So many nervous parents, we've seen video of them waiting and some people being escorted away as well. Can you talk a little bit about what these houses of worship, whether it's a mosque, whether it's a synagogue, other places in our heightened political environment, what they have been doing to respond, what kind of presence may have been at this mosque to meet somebody who wished to do others harm?
Yeah, no, it's an important question because we are in indeed this elevated threat environment. Obviously, we have been for some time. It's something that authorities have warned about, this kind of toxic political climate that we're in. Obviously, we've been reporting on just the surge of anti-Semitism in this country, which is off the charts. But the FBI, other agencies also warning that other faiths, to include the Islamic faith, face threats as well. And that is something that across the board will, concern authorities. In fact, over the course of about the last 3.5 years, whenever we would see reports that law enforcement has beefed up security at a particular Jewish house of worship, in a lot of places they would also do the same out of an abundance of caution for Islamic houses of worship in various cities as well, just because the threats are indeed elevated. And again, all it takes is one individual that may be inspired by some type of hatred to obtain a firearm, which is very easy to do in this country, to then go and try to inflict some type of violence. And so this is something that authorities authorities have been certainly working to try to quell. One thing that is important that authorities will also be working to do after they identify this person is determine, is this someone who was on their radar in the past? Is this someone who had potentially made threats against either this particular institution, the Islamic Center of San Diego, maybe threats to Muslims in general, other organizations across the country? Is this someone that they knew? Did they investigate who this person was? Or is this someone who was entirely off any radar, and this may have been their first potential act of violence that they go and then try to perpetrate, which is obviously much more difficult to try to stop if there hasn't been some type of pattern of threats actually made. But nevertheless, that is a big question as well. Did any law enforcement agency in this country know who this person was, and did this person actually have some type of criminal past?
Really good points, all. And I want to bring this in as well. This, according to a CNN affiliate, KFMB, this is reporting, you can find it on CNN.com, that a retiree who lives close to the Islamic Center of San Diego says that he was eating lunch at his home when he heard a spate of gunfire come from the direction of the mosque. He noted there's also, of course, a school there. The retiree told our CNN affiliate that he heard 2 more rounds of gunfire. He said they sounded like they came from a semi-automatic weapon. After calling 911, he waited and then saw the swarm of ambulances. So this, again, an account, not an eyewitness, but someone who heard this unfolding situation earlier. That's what they told our CNN affiliate. Josh Campbell, that seems to at least confirm that, and I know you had reported that there was a shooting incident here. Now we have this person telling us that they heard what sounded to them like semi-automatic fire.
That's right, and all of those eyewitnesses and ear witnesses will be important. Again, authorities are would first be trying to identify any threat that's there, which they now say has been neutralized. But then also what's been happening, and I'll remind our viewers, the images that you're seeing of law enforcement going into the building, we put that on a delay for officer safety. We don't want to be telegraphing what officer tactical teams are about to do, but we've seen them going through that building, and that's because they have to rule out whether there are indeed any additional shooters that are there as well. And you know, if there is additional gunfire, obviously they'll vector towards the sound of that. But absent that, they have to rule it out. But as you mentioned, the authorities will be working to try to determine, well, how many shots may have been fired, and then obviously trying to determine the full extent of any potential victims that may have been there. One thing that authorities will do once they arrive on the scene, the forensic examiners, after the scene is determined there's no longer a threat, is try to identify every single round of ammunition that this person fired. When a firearm fires a bullet, it then ejects a shell casing, which authorities will then identify, they'll label, again, to try to count, to determine how many shots were actually fired, and if to the extent that they can, the direction that every single one of those shots went as well. Some situations, and this happens, I can tell you, even as a law enforcement officer, if a law enforcement officer fires their weapon, they'll work to determine, is there any potential that the round of ammunition went beyond this target, somewhere else in and around that area as well. And so they just want to try to rule all of that out. We know that a lot of businesses, schools, other houses of worship around that area were placed into lockdown immediately after that happened, as authorities tried to determine exactly what happened. No word of any potential victims outside of that law enforcement cordon there, but a lot of work that they still have to do, both physically and as obviously investigatively.
Absolutely. And of course, we have more information now coming in from eyewitness accounts and, as Josh referred to them, ear witness accounts. A woman who lives across the street from the Islamic Center of San Diego, she lives there with her husband and 2 daughters, says she was eating lunch in her kitchen when she heard explosions, her word, outside. She went upstairs to her daughter's bedroom and she looked out the window. She says she saw children playing outside at the Islamic Center's playground, and she saw them start heading into the building. The woman called 911, and while she was on the phone with emergency services, she says she saw a uniformed officer be shot. This is what she told us, quote, "He received 2-3 impacts and then he fell. And 911 asked me if he was okay, and I said, yes, he just stood up. I told them to hurry up because there are so many kids," she said. She then subsequently called her husband and her 12-year-old daughter's school, which was just a few blocks away, and she says that school remained on lockdown. Again, an eyewitness speaking with CNN. So, Josh, what is that additional texture here? Her being able to go up to her bedroom window, look out the window, see a man in uniform be shot. He gets up. There are also in her purview children that are leaving a playground and going into the building.
Someone who was actually there, seeing what happened. That does raise the question about whether the person that may have been struck here and killed, we're obviously referring to this person as a victim, whether that was a member of the security team that was there at the mosque. This eyewitness describing the person as well wearing some type of uniform. If indeed we're talking about a law enforcement style uniform, that would make sense. It's unclear whether this is an area that San Diego police routinely patrols on site. We know that they're obviously going around houses of worship in order to patrol. But we do know, because of the heightened threat environment that we're in, Islamic centers, the members of the Jewish faith will often have full-time security on site just because of the elevated threat environment and just the range of potential threats that we've seen. But as you mentioned, this information that we're continuing to get from people who were there, who were hearing things, who were seeing things, that providing important insight for us, but also will be very critical for this investigation.
Yeah. So, Josh Campbell is going to, of course, continue reporting. We're getting additional eyewitness information in here to CNN. One person speaking to our cameras there on the ground outside the Islamic Center of San Diego. Let's watch.
That are so young, I can't even imagine what they're going through right now, and not exactly sure how many people have been hit or how many people have been killed.
Did you get any word as to where the shooter was?
I just heard that they said that they had infiltrated the inside of the building. I wasn't sure exactly. I could hear the officers shouting to evacuate in the background, and it was paralyzing and so frightening. And at the same time, I had to drop everything and come directly to make sure our community is safe and they're okay, and they know that they're not alone in this really insane time.
Josh Campbell, what do you make of what she said there? And of course, as we look at just the enormous response presence, we've now had 2 eyewitness accounts that have spoken of the small children that were in this space, in this area, as this shooting incident was unfolding. That might give us a little bit, unfortunately, of explanation for why this response looks the way that it does. And of course, we're still waiting to understand fully what the ramifications might be.
No, that's right. I mean, it's heartbreaking to think that the number of small children now impacted, and this, coast to coast in this country, we see this on any given day. Even if someone is not impacted physically by violence, there's huge emotional trauma that will often result as well. And again, we're hearing those stories. We've been seeing the congregants being brought out there, at least we did earlier, by law enforcement. You can imagine the trauma those people were feeling, just trying to make sure that themselves were safe and people that they knew were safe.